Hey gang, I thought that we'd go through and do a real quick sprint watch on this one. Got a few changes this time around and an update on when they're going to update us on 3.19, which will be the next patch. 3.18 just dropped to the PTU, I think, yesterday or Monday. So I can actually talk about that now, which I will start doing streams on because it's going to be a while before I'll do another one of these. I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this. All right, so this is what I call a sprint watch, which is basically just where I go in and look at the roadmap, all the various changes on it, kind of the things that CIG is calling attention to, any big changes that I see, anything really significant that I see that isn't necessarily obvious. Basically anything that I think is significant. So I always kind of start this out with a caveat, and that is that the progress tracker here is CIG's Jira. And basically what CIG is using is the agile development system where they'll have their devs work in sprints. And so they work for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long the sprint is, usually 2 weeks. And then at the end of that time, they reassess and they sort of say, hey, we sort of had these explorations. This is kind of a cool side thing that we could do instead. We need more teams. We need more time. Or, hey, we banged this thing out and we're 100% done. Nothing more needs to be done with it. Here you go. That's rare. So just because you see something on the deliverables progress tracker that is 100% done, it does not mean that it's imminently dropping into the game or that it's actually finished. It just means that the currently planned sprints are complete. So with that in mind, that is the one big caveat, is just because something is 100% done does not mean it's actually done. Until it's actually in your hands in the game. And even then, they're probably still going to iterate on it. The way that I do this is I usually start with the roadmap roundup, just read through that, kind of give a brief couple thoughts on it. Then we click over and we look at the release view, sort of see what the changes are. There won't be many this time. And then sort of the meat of this show is going through the deliverables and actually pointing out the different changes that are happening there. I'll put links in the down below part so that if you want to skip one thing and go to another, you can just click through the timestamps. And let's go ahead and get this. Let's start with the roadmap roundup. So I say this every time. This top part usually doesn't change, and it didn't this time. So we're just going to go down straight to the notable changes. And there is a big one in here. Notable changes for December 21st, 2022. As mentioned earlier this week and This Week in Star Citizen, Alpha 3.18 is now targeting early 2023 for release to the live servers, which is basically what I thought. I thought they weren't even going to get to 3.18 until March. I think it's actually going to be around February just because January is usually locked out in team meetings and kind of planning sessions, and so they don't really start really doing sort of the granular work until February. So I'd be surprised if we get the live version in January. It'd probably be February, hopefully near the beginning. So is 2020 release to the live servers. This is now reflected in 3.18's release view column, and we'll check that in a bit. No other significant changes to report this week. Our first roadmap update of the year will be on February 8th. So going to be a little while until you get another one of these, although I think I'm going to be doing a kind of a year in review. Maybe this weekend if I get to it. Obviously for reasons, this weekend might not happen, but next week probably will. It should be relatively quiet around, so if not this weekend, next week, I'll probably kind of do a year in review. I'll do a deep dive since I haven't done one of those basically in a year. This update will include the extension of both upstream and downstream team schedules further into 2023, as well as the addition of features to the, yeah, I screwed that sentence up. Let's try that again. This update will include the extension of both upstream and downstream team schedules further into 2023, as well as the additional addition of features for the 319 column. See, I got through it. Happy Luminalia. We'll see you in the new year. And yeah, basically just the big thing I wanted to point out was that February 8th date, that we're not going to be getting another roadmap update until February 8th. So we're going to have a little, I was kind of hoping they would get 319 kind of sneak it in here, but with 318 kind of lagging, I figured that they might go with this option. So we can still be speculative on what 319 will hold, and we'll do that when we go through the progress tracker. I'll kind of go through my usual. Nothing changed here. You can tell when things are on here that are changed because there'll be a little yellow dot right next to whatever section, and then if you open it, it'll have that on there. I am kind of surprised that they didn't release another ship, but they usually don't do it until the patch goes live. So the only ship we're getting with 318 is the Vulture. Although we just got a whole slew of ships for Sitcon and basically the 317.4 patch. I mean, we got 8 ships in the last patch, so we're doing fine. And the Vulture will be plenty to play with. People that have the Reclaimer will finally have something to do. But no real changes on the release view. So that one's short and sweet. So let's pop on over the progress tracker. What I like to do is set to the 1 quarter view, so you get kind of a more granular view. You can see what's happening on the week. You can set it to 2 quarters, but that's going to kind of reset things. I've gone through and pregame this and kind of opened up the various deliverables where either significant changes have happened or I think they're significant deliverable for one reason or another, and I'll kind of get to that as we go. Aerodynamic control surfaces, that one's got a little ways to go. I think it's going to be, yeah, late next year. We might be getting that one for 319. We'll have to see, but that is in the window to be a 319 deliverable. Another thing that would be a good 319 deliverable would be better AI interactivity, because a lot of the AI things just wrapped, and a lot of them are kind of Squadron 42 focused, but they all have their pieces in the PU too. In particular, AI untrained combat is wrapping pretty soon, so that might be something that makes an appearance in 319. And vehicle perception. This was what I thought might be a dark horse for the thing that Tony Z was going to try to sneak in. They mentioned on, I think it was either not Around the Verse, Star Citizen Live or Inside Star Citizen, either one of those 2 shows. They mentioned that Tony Z, who was kind of the mastermind behind the AI behaviors in Quanta, was going to try to sneak something into this patch, just given that it was delayed so much. I had a suspicion that it might be one of these. It might just be Quanta affecting the economy. We'll just kind of have to see how 318 plays out. But anyway, AI untrained combat, vehicle perception wrapping real soon. If not this patch, 319 is a pretty good bet. So going on down, this is what I think will be in 319. I think it'll be a big UI quality of life improvement, and I've been saying for a while that I wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of a tier 0 engineering patch. It would be cool because there's a lot of things that are kind of engineering and kind of that non-pilot, non-captain, non-turret ship, multi-crew ship gameplay coming into the verse soon. And I'm kind of been eyeballing 319 for like March to June, somewhere in that window. And if it hits that window, then there's a lot of these little things, big things that could sneak in, like the map marker. That's significant, just wrapped. Doesn't mean they won't do any more work on it, but just sort of given a lot of the things that are related to that kind of go in tandem with that are wrapping soon too. I think that this is actually wrapping pretty soon. They might do a little bit of polishing if it's a 319 asset. Going on down, Arena Commander Classic Race Mode. This one's wrapping pretty soon. We know that we're getting racing improvements in the PU, so that makes sense. Heading on down, Banu Merchantman. So this one's sad, but not surprising. They gave us plenty of heads up that they were going to do this. It had a 171-week sprint, so it was, at the moment, it was showing that it was going to wrap in June of next year. It wouldn't have wrapped in June. They were just, that was how far they had it planned out. And then it was going to, even if they finished all the work on the innards of the ship, they'd still have to do Banu AI, all the visual effects, all the sound effects, basically all the downstream teams. So the earliest it would have dropped is around this time next year, if not the year after that, which I wouldn't have been surprised if they had said June of 2024. Now they've decided to put a pin in it and move those. I think it's 2 devs were working on it from the EU vehicle content team. One was kind of a lead, and I think one was actually kind of doing the bulk of the work. They're pulling them off and they're having work on smaller ships or something like the Galaxy. I'll get to that in a second. Bombs just wrapped. Technically bombs were released in 3.15, but this is what I mean by they'll continue to iterate on these things. So it was released in 3.15, but that was only the size 10 bomb, the bomb that the A2 carries. But you can see they just wrapped again, and now they're kind of working on the smaller bombs that fighters and things like the Gladiator could carry. I don't know if we'll actually see that in 3.18. So maybe a 3.19 asset, bring it in with the new flight model might be a cool sort of, you're in atmosphere, you're flying around, you're dropping bombs. Copacetic. Bounty Hunter V2. What did I want to say about Bounty Hunter V2? Oh, they added 6 weeks to it. So it was 63. Now it's 69. It doesn't matter. It's a next year asset anyway. My guess on Bounty Hunter V2 is they're going to drop it with Pyro, so 4.0, just to kind of put bounty hunters and pirates on equal footing, because they'll be in a lawless system. Like the people with prices on their heads can run to Pyro, and then bounty hunters can go, but it's not like they're operating in Stanton where they've got the whole UEE and the advocacy behind them wherever they go, and they can't just call it friends like that and be there, would be my guess with bounty hunting. All of the Squadron 42 chapters are all right there. Again, they're going to be polishing out Squadron 42, but I think they're probably having a go, no-go meeting on Squadron 42, whether they want to move it to beta. We'll probably hear about that next year if they do decide to go that route. Charge Drain wrapped, but I think that one actually wrapped in time for the last one of these I did. Basically, that'll just be when you're using your multi-tool, the batteries will go out on it, and you'll have to change out batteries as you're moving stuff around, just to kind of put a limiting on that. You won't just be able to move a billion boxes around your hangar, around your ship with no consequence. You'll have to plan ahead and bring batteries. And then you're going to have to start balancing off. Do I bring batteries, or do I bring ammo, or do I bring food, or whatever? They'll get there eventually. But Charge Drain. A Crusader Spirit. So it's not real clear which one of these they're building. If they're just going to build the cargo, or if they're going to bust out all 3 at once. The way that they did the Hercules, the C2, was they rolled out the cargo version and I think the M2 in one patch, and then a couple patches later they rolled out the A2. They might do the same with this one. The biggest, most interesting versions or variants of the Spirit out there is actually the E2, because that'll introduce passenger gameplay. I think it'll have the Mixmaster in there, which one of these days I'll go over what the Mixmaster is. It was a thing that was coming with the Gemini Starliner, so that'll be interesting gameplay that's coming. So let's head on down to Cutting tier 2, what do I want to say about this one? Oh, this one is another one that added 6 weeks. Oh, one thing about the Crusader Spirit, it's about halfway through its sprint, but one thing to keep in mind about these sprints, you can sort of see this one included the concept. Then there's a couple months there where they didn't do anything, and then the EU content team picked it up. They're about halfway through this. But keep in mind, there's no downstream teams on this. So even though this looks like it's ending around Q2 of next year, when they get about probably here, this will start jumping out. I would expect this one to actually hit probably around SitCon of next year. Seems pretty fair. The Crusader isn't a really big ship. It's like Freelancer or Cutlass sized. So, yeah, it shouldn't be a super complicated ship, and they've got a pretty well developed style guide of Crusader. So yeah, I'd say SitCon of next year is pretty reasonable for that one. Cutting tier 2, they added 6 weeks to it. Derelict spaceships are wrapping pretty soon. I assume that's one that they're going to keep iterating on. They're going to keep adding more and more ships. Right now they have the Caterpillar, Freelancer, Cutlass, 600i was just added, MSR was just added, but they're going to be adding all of those ships. So I mean, C2s, everything else is going to be in there. Probably Idris and Javelins will be out there eventually anyway. They already have one Javelin sitting out there. There's just nothing left of it. It's just a carcass. Let's see, distortion propagation. Let's just read this one. Further work on this damage type to allow correct propagation into systems. This makes the location of impact much more important. So this will be distortion weapons. If you are hitting it like where the sensors on a ship is, it's going to lose its sensors. If you're hitting it where the batteries are or the engine is, it's going to lose its engine. So it's going to be much more specific. Those things are going to be like scalpels. You're going to be able to systematically shut off a ship if you know where to shoot. Work on that one just started. Just thought that one was interesting. That distortion guns, I would assume that is one that they're going to try to land at the same time as bounty hunting, because eventually you're going to have to take people in alive. Like you'll get 100 space bucks for just killing someone. You'll get like 10,000 for taking them in alive. But again, something I always like to warn about is when you see it like this, it just looks like one big sprint. The better idea is to open it up, and then you can see which teams are working on it. Anytime you have gaps like this where there's more than a month in between the work, especially when it's this far out that's planned, don't put a lot of faith in that. That's kind of that team sort of saying, if everything goes according to plan, we'll be able to work on it here. Fit it into that window, and that's when we'll work on it. But that's provided that their current sprints don't bump them off of that. So just something to keep in mind. And also, on February 8th, don't be shocked if nearly all of this is thrown out of the window and numbers grow exponentially or shrink or things just disappear or whatnot. Usually after the start of the year, I basically start a new sheet and I just kind of start it fresh. I'm just kind of like, this is the new year, because that's effectively what they do. So distortion propagation work has just started. Let's pop on down. Indie properties plugin. This one's ending real soon. This one's kind of cool. So what they can do is they can sort of mass change things for all of the entities with a certain property. So let's say they wanted to have all laser weapons get like an extra bit of penetration on shields or something. They could just click the button on this plugin and it would do it. So they're not going in and changing things on each individual weapon or each individual ship or whatever. So that's why I understand that to me. If you know different, let me know in the down below parts. EVA tier 2. This is another one of those quality of life cool things I think will be dropping in 319. I thought they were going to try to sneak this in for 318, but it doesn't look like it made it. So 319 EVA is coming in, and that's associated with another one, 0G push pull, which we'll get to at the very end. But a 319 asset. at the very least, 319 should be like better motion. So atmospheric flight, EVA, better UI for both the MFDs, map and radar, all of that sort of stuff is all kind of getting worked on. Gen 12 just wrapped. It's in 318. Congratulations. They're going to keep working on it. They're going to iterate on it, but we're getting the first version. Jump points. Always like to talk about jump points because this is the best indicator of when they think they're going to be dropping 4.0. So if we pop out to here, basically around the end of June, this is one on February 8th. I'm going to be really, really, really curious to see, because essentially what's going on here is they had people basically planned out to the end of June. So the end of Q2, 2023, they had those teams planned out, and you'll see there's a couple little things here that kind of go over that line. But in February, well, basically all through January, they're going to look at it and they're going to reassess these teams and everything. And you're going to see a lot of things like this jump out. Like we're going to see them add 30, 40 weeks or something like that. Or they might say, no, 121 weeks is all we needed. We want to drop 4.0 for SitCon next year. This will easily be ready by then. Guess we'll find out. Another thing we'll kind of find out is how much of a blocker this PES, the server tech, actually was, because I think it was a pretty big blocker. And now that it looks like they've kind of solved it, and they'll kind of keep iterating on it and moving it up. Hopefully it starts opening doors and getting things moving in the rest of the game. Map and radar system rework. This is kind of what I was talking about. That kind of goes along with the MFD rework, which is right here, which is also, this one's ending a little bit further out. This one's kind of another, probably 4.0 rather than 319. This one can make it to 319 though. So this combined with the map marker would make a lot of sense. And that does kind of go along with a multi-crew gameplay, because your co-pilot or your engineer could be controlling the map or the nav points and sort of saying, this is an interesting point, Captain, go look at this, kind of a thing. So who knows, maybe that's what we're going to get. We're going to find out. They didn't talk about that at all this year, so we don't really know what that is, but based on the name, map and radar, kind of cool. MFD rework, another big, very cool one. Probably not getting that one till 4.0. The whole C kind of keeps jumping on and off of development. I think they kind of throw a person or two on it whenever they have time, but there's no real rush. Basically until Cargo V2? I think it's V2 at this point, but basically when we get freight elevators and persistent hangars is when they'll bring in the whole C, and when the economy can actually handle a ship that moves that much cargo. I would assume that's going to be a 4.0 asset. You have those big cargo movers moving through Pyro and Stanton, or going from Stanton to Pyro. That's where you kind of use those things. Going from like Daymar to Port Olisar in a whole C. One, you couldn't land on the moon, but still. That's whole C and above is for intersystem or interstellar trade, not in-system trade. But they started working on that again. So moving on down, ocean shader improvements. Again, released in 3.10. No, it wasn't, because they're still working on it. So they're just going to keep iterating on these things. But as you're flying over all those new rivers and oceans on Hurston, double check them. They might be a little bit prettier now, and not just because of Gen 12 render. The Origin X1, this is another one that I kind of like to point at as an example of things to watch out for. So if you look at it this way, it's just one gigantic line. So the Origin X1 is a space bike, and a pretty small one at that. I think it might even be smaller than the Nox, but it just looks like this gigantic blue line. But if you open it up, the re-concept of it was way over here. And then they had several months, almost a year, and then they're going to work on it in like a week and a half, which this is kind of during their planning session, so who knows. And then there's going to be several months, and these guys are going to work on it, which my guess would be with the Origin X1, what they're doing is they're going to try to time it with the 600i gold standard. Like they're kind of trying to time it with the people with that. So once they go through and they finish the rework on the 600i, they'll try to release it with the X1. So probably SitCon of next year. I wouldn't be too surprised if they could get it done by then, especially if they pull people off of the Abandoned Merchantman. They're going to have a little bit more dev time to work on these things. Hopefully, the damn well better. Physical damage breakability just wrapped. That one's kind of cool. Kind of necessary for both engineering gameplay and salvage gameplay. Because you'll be able to literally break ships apart. I don't think we'll see this in 3.18, but 3.19 with ship munching, that'll be in there. Ropes, we never did figure out what ropes were. I mean, we know what ropes are. We just don't know how they're going to be used in the game. Probably exploration. They just wrapped it. Hopefully we'll be hearing more about that next year. Should be pretty cool. Gone on down. Pyro space stations. What do I want to say about this one? Not much. I didn't have anything on my notes. I think this is just another one that's probably a pretty good indicator of 4.0. So yeah, probably a SitCon of next year if everything's going smoothly. We're going to know probably by June how good 4.0 is looking for the end of the year. Hopefully we get it before then, but I'm eyeballing SitCon. That would may have nice synergy to release 4.0 at SitCon with all the new mechanics and just be like, go wild and cheer in person. Hopefully we don't get like COVID Epsilon. Resource management. This one's a pretty cool one. Did they do anything with this? It's about 80% of the way through. This is going to be a huge one for engineering, and this is the one that I was kind of eyeballing for why I think 3.19 might be a June patch, is because this one was pushed out there. But resource management could also be one that they release to us in modules. So they sort of say, here's resource management on ships. And then we'll get resource management on stations and habs and stuff like that, like things on the ground. Just a thought. RSI Links, which is the executive version of the Ursa. They're working their way through it. Looking pretty good. Again, this doesn't have downstream teams. So add a few weeks onto this. Again, there's a ground vehicle, so it shouldn't take them too long. 39 weeks, I'd say 45 to 50 is probably pretty reasonable for the links. Do I have anything I want to say about that? They added 4 weeks to it, which I would expect them to add a couple more weeks when they come back in February. Salvage vehicle munching. This is what I was talking about before. This is going to be tier 1. Wrapping end of quarter 2. So that June patch. If that's 3.19, if they drop 3.19 earlier than 4.0, vehicle munching should be good. But that's another little clue that I think 3.19 will be a June patch. Satellites points of interest. What do I want to say about this? Oh, it's nearly done. Yeah, so we got about another week and a half of that. So that could be another little thing like rivers that they drop into 3.19. Just sort of, here's some more things that you can do. More sites to see, things to do on them. Go get them. Ship CPU. So this is one of those where I said, take a little bit of warning. It was something like 160 weeks or something. It was ending way out in like quarter 2 or quarter 3. They chopped it. And so they said, no, we're done. They're not actually done. They just don't know when the next team, probably the vehicle feature team, I would assume, because they've got the vehicle experience team, and audio. So it's probably the vehicle feature team is the one they're waiting on. And once they know that, come February, we'll know what's going on with ship CPU. But that one will be absolutely critical for engineering gameplay. So we'll have to wait. That one's finished, but they're definitely going to be doing more work on it. Ship CPUs is going to be the ones that you want if you want to run blades. Squadron 42 vehicle support, I just always kind of like to point out this one, because if you want to know where X, Y, or Z ship is, or why it isn't being worked on, this is why. Every single team that works on ships is working on vehicle support, and they're working on it into infinity at the moment, because they're still trying to get that game out the door. Stanton fashion clothing wrap, so you should see some people wearing appropriate uniforms like Whammer's uniforms. Subsumption editor, that's the AI, basically Tony Z's NPCs, what they're doing, like their schedules and stuff like that. That's what this is. Looks like they just wrapped on it. So an editor integration, that sort of sounds like it allows the devs the tool to start deciding how they're going to set that up. So come next year, we should actually start to see them operating on the subsumption schedule. Say that 3 times fast. Okay. Trial race missions. These are new. They're dropping in 3.18, but you can see they're going to keep working on them. So they're probably going to add more and more racetracks as time goes on. Tracking app. This one is for, that's for bounty hunters. I think that one is coming. Did they already do that? I'm trying to remember if they already did this one or not. I think they already did the app, but that's going to definitely be that's a bounty hunter version 2 thing, is that tracking app. Just kind of want to point that out. I always thought that one was cool. Unannounced ships. So, interesting thing here is that turned out that the RSI Galaxy was the 19-week. There was 3 I was thinking it could be. There was one that was like this 67-week monster. There was a 19-week concept only, and then there's this weird audio VFX one that I don't know how you make a vehicle with just audio and VFX, but it turns out it's not that one. So we don't know what that is, but I'm real curious. Maybe an alien ship, like maybe the Kurthak or energy based. I don't know. But one of the ones that I thought was a strong candidate was the 67-week one. And what I was saying during the last one of these was I was kind of hoping it wasn't this one, because this one wraps, or the concept sprint. Oh, they pulled it. So this is just, the concept sprint was wrapping right around March, which is Invictus. And I was thinking that 67 weeks, which is a hell of a long time for a concept sprint, would be a huge military ship. So the things that this could be, either way, 67 weeks for the concept sprint, it is an enormous ship. The real question is it a manufacturer that we don't have a style guide for? Or is it an alien ship? Or is it something like the Pegasus that's like a carrier, like something that's Kraken sized? I don't even think the Kraken has sprint that long. But this ship is gigantic. I don't know what that is. The Odyssey, for comparison, had a 55-week sprint, concept sprint. So 67 weeks, big ship. This one's 37. We don't know what this one is, but it's wrapping around the same time. So I'd say Invictus, but Invictus is around here. So these are both stretching a little bit further. But neither one of those are the Galaxy. I knew this 37-week one wasn't. Down here we got, I think I just left these open for reasons. These are ones that they've just started work on. Unified item ports, that's just making sure all the names for the various links for, I think it's not only weapons, but like clothing and stuff like that. It's just everything has the same name so that an attachment point is an attachment point size 1 is an attachment point size 1 for everything that can fall into that category, kind of a thing. It's the way I understand it. Vehicle tractor beams, you're not getting the Argo SRV until you get vehicle tractor beams. There are other ships that have tractor beams. That one's due to wrap in Q2, but again, the question is that actually where they think they'll stop, or is that just as far as they have it planned? We won't know until February. Once February, a lot of this should be pretty clear. I'm trying to remember if they... No, it doesn't look like they added any time to it. Volt Parallax, they just wrapped that one, so check those loot boxes. There might be some Volt weapons hiding in some of them. I would not put it over CIG to hide something like that. Weapon Misfire and Wear, again, this is one that would have good synergy with like a engineering gameplay. Wraps around that time, around June. In theory, again, the team hasn't started working on it, so they'll reassess in January. And we'll find out what the timeline actually is. And the last one, 0G Push Pull, which goes along with Iron Manning around the verse. EVA, Tier 2. This one goes hand in hand, literally, with Tier 2 EVA, because you can sort of alligator walk along walls and stuff when you're in Synergy. Just kind of cool stuff. And that's kind of where we're at for now, gang. So I'll be back to the shallow dives on this February 8th, more than likely. And I'll probably do a deep dive on all the things that we got through the year and things that I think are coming, kind of speculation. That one tends to run a little bit longer. Again, this one should be around 30 minutes long. That one will probably be hour and a half, I would assume. So deep dive. Other than that, that's really all I got for you, gang. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like what I do. If you don't, let me know. That's pretty much all I got. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. See you next time.